Good afternoon. The purpose of this public hearing is twofold. I'll begin by presenting the proposed 2025 budget. It has been prepared and reviewed by Mr. Josh Davenport from our district, Mr. Tom Johnson from Administrative Assistance that helps us oversees our finances sometimes, Mr. Sam Vanderveen, who is from the DLGF, and Cindy Allward, our treasurer, and me. So there have been a lot of eyes on this throughout this process. The board will have time to review the proposal before being asked to vote to accept it at our public board meeting on October 10th, 2024. Once the budget portion of this public hearing has concluded, then Renee Howell and the representative from the Southeast Mountain Education Association and I will hold the public hearing for the negotiations to begin for the 2024-25 collective bargaining agreement. Indiana statute requires that this public hearing be held before we can begin negotiations, and that is scheduled to take place on September 23rd, and then will continue until an agreement is reached and the contract is ratified by the SEFSC and the school board. The public is welcome to share comments regarding the proposed budget or teacher bargaining with me. The budget proposal that you are going to see this evening is also going to be posted on our website so that the community will have a chance to look at that. There isn't a collective bargaining agreement yet to put on there because, as I said, this has to happen before we can even begin negotiations. But sometimes people like to give us suggested things that they'd like us to consider. As a reminder, the collective bargaining agreement, the only thing that we can really discuss per Indiana statute is salary and benefits with the union. So any comments about either of those, if anyone in the public would like to send me an email, my email address is Grimes, first initial T, so GRIMEST @sefschools.org, and then in the subject line, please either put budget or teacher contract, and I will save those in a file so that the board sees those about the budget. The union sees those about the contract. Well, the board will probably see those too since they have read them. But we love public input about any of this. Are there any questions so far? All right. Josh has got prepared for each of you copies of the booklet. Pass those down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here's yours. If you want to look at one, because we have a couple of board members who weren't able to be here tonight, you're welcome to look at it. Really, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the budget was prepared and any differences that from last year to this year. At the very beginning, you're going to see the budget calendar. There was a notice to taxpayers in Gateway, so that's another way that this was published. It was also published in the local media that we were having this hearing, and that's another place that community members can go to look for our budget. The public hearing is this evening, and it includes our capital project fund and bus replacement. I'll ask you to vote to adopt the budget at our October 10th meeting, and if you approve it, then the next day it will be uploaded in Gateway and approved in there. So when we prepare the budget each year, we start with our current year financial worksheet, and that includes, Cindy looks over that a lot since she knows where we're at each year. It also gives information about, where we're at with our appropriations and so forth. But that's a good starting point. But we also, as we prepare the budget, we start with what you approved for 2024. So we get our budget forms, and that information goes in there. because the 2025 budget is very, very similar. Our funding sources don't change, and so that's how, and the things that we have to spend money on does not really change. So we start with that. Once that is set up and we have initial numbers, then we look at the proposed funding that is coming, first of all, for students, which goes to our education fund. We do that number is based on our expected enrollment that the state and we agree on that we think we're going to have. And then the state gives us an estimate of what they think we will get for the year. Now we also, as we do that, we are very cognitive of the fact that there are 2 count days in Indiana. So typically, whatever our count day is October 1st, we typically have a lower count day at our second count in February for a number of reasons. There are students who have moved in and out of the district over that time, but also because we typically have a number of December graduates in our district, and that also brings down. And if that count goes down, our funding goes down. So we keep that in mind. Based on that, for 2024, we had a little higher enrollment than we had expected when you approved the budget last year. And so that money we didn't have appropriated, so we couldn't spend any of that. And now as we're getting into September, our budget is really, really tight. So we have that extra funding because we did do decent teacher raises and non-certified staff raises and other things. The costs went up with the cost of bus replacements and lots of other things. So we will be asking for an additional appropriation at our next board meeting. And it's not a loan or anything like that. It's money that we did bring in this year, and we need it so we can finish paying our staff from now through December. So we will be asking for that additional appropriation. That said, when we built this year's budget for the education fund that comes out of the student dollars, we looked at that and tried to make sure that we were hopefully getting the appropriations where we won't have to do that again a year from now. But the budget was built around what we expected in July, and then a couple weeks ago we got something from the state and it looked like they had projected a little bit more. So again, this was revised a little bit to put some more in the salary lines for both certified and non-certified, so that hopefully we won't be needing to request additional appropriations a year from now. But the extra that we proposed from last year over this year really has been put into the salary lines. The other lines that come out of education, and that's education related services, our instructional aides that work with the teachers, supplies for the classrooms, some things that directly go to students or directly impact them, school administrators, but not me. That's part of education, so that has been built in. Most of those lines are very similar to what they were last year, other than if Cindy said, we need more in this line, but a little less in this line. So but it's still within that budget, so we've done that. Then the next part of your budget, the operations budget, before we go to the debt worksheet, the operations budget, I just want to tell you how it's formulated. Same way, we looked at what we had last year, and then once it was published, the income tax that Fountain County expects for us to receive and so forth, that goes into our operations budget. And so those tax dollars that are collected for the county, whether it's from license plates or from property taxes or whatever, once we knew our portion or our estimated portion from the county, then that's how we build our operations budget. Our operations fund pays everything that's not a direct classroom. So all of our maintenance and upkeep, our fuel, our buses, the superintendent, the people, well, anyone that works in this office, all of our non-certified staff except for the instructional assistants. Really, all of those things come out of our operations fund. And again, there's not a significant difference between last year's operation expected budget and this year's. In the book, there's your book has the debt worksheet. This is completed by Cindy, and it shows you what our current debts are, the general obligation bond series 2023 that we got last year that we're using to do some pool work. There's still one from 2017 that's being paid off, and you can see when each of these are falling off, and that's why we're currently in a bond process, because we need to do some new work and some of these things are falling off. But also, we looked at this and built this around so that we could bring the tax rate back down as we promised that we would. So in this budget, the payments for these different bonds, the proposed payments, are going to do that. They will bring the tax rate back where we want it to, right around that 33% level. The next section in the budget book is the budget estimate, and this shows you both our estimates and our allocations. So again, where things are allocated within each area, and you can see first it shows you the debt service, what we expect to get in for that and what will go out. We expect to put $500,000 as our rainy day that we try to get in each year so that we have things when emergencies come up. It doesn't always work out that we can put that much in, but we certainly, it's a goal. The education funding, you can see the different programs that it pays for, and a lot of it though has to do with employee benefits and wages, or as I said,
Dr. Harris, if you don't mind me chiming in real quick. So this, the allocations here for the education and the operations fund, these are the same as last year, like she touched on earlier. Something that Cindy and I want to do before the budget's built next year is sit down, and while these numbers can be moved, still in the education budget, they can be reallocated. We want to get these numbers a little bit more dialed in as department, so she doesn't have to make those allocation changes. It can just be, this is what we need for this, and then kind of go through and build that off of that.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, and they did attempt to do that a little bit this year, but there's still a lot of work to be done on that.
Of course.
Because we can move things, as he just said, in the education fund. We can't take education dollars and just arbitrarily pay something out of operation or vice versa. But within that fund, we can make some movements.
It'd be easier on Cindy that way if it was allocated appropriately.
So yeah, going through here, it shows, both education and operations, and you'll notice the total amounts match. So for example, on page 5, when we're looking at operations, that 15.4 million that was published and adopted, we cannot spend more than what's adopted. Even if by some miracle we end up with more. We would have to get both your approval and the state's approval and DLGF to have additional appropriations, even if we have the money. So we have a very good, right now, cash balance, but that's because we need to move some of those funds in.
So, can I ask a question?
Yes.
On page 5, we've got the capital outlays for land and acquisition and development. Will we need those in the 2025 budget, since those we're just basing that off of 24, but
Which one are you looking at, the,
the
these
12
down here?
now,
Like
where we
fifth on the
acquired the
12,
land,
23,
yeah.
7, okay.
Well, if we don't use it for that, we'll still.
You're
it
just
might-
gonna move it to another category?
We might, yeah, it
I
might
got
be
you.
the fuel costs go up more for our
Yep.
buses or
Okay.
the heat bill for.
You said the
hoping
bottom
with
line
HVAC
isn't
there.
going to change, it's how we're gonna allocate these things.
Right.
That's correct.
So,
But I
okay,
can-
that just
but-
looks,
yeah. I understand, I can go back and talk to Cindy about that.
I mean, I guess that would be a question I would have, but whenever we,
Yeah, of course.
Well, and the other thing, if we
I'm
don't.
not saying we wouldn't, but.
Yeah,
Sure.
but if we don't put any of that in there, and then something comes up, again, we'd have to get permission to
Mhm.
put that line in the budget too.
I
So
see.
sometimes having it in there and then moving it to another area if we don't do it
Mm-hmm.
is easier than not having it in there and then we can't do something that we want to do.
Got it.
It's like this year, who knew that that was going to come up in,
Mm-hmm.
right. Estimate of the 2025 revenue. You can see in there what we received from July 1 through December 31st, or what we expect for 2024, and what we expect to receive January through December of 2025. So those two down at the bottom, they don't match, but that's because it's different dates at the top. So,
Mhm.
just but it breaks down what we expect to get, where those funds are coming, and then where those funds go. So some of them are for debt service, that comes from the license tax, commercial vehicle excise tax, and the financial institution tax. Are the other things you can see where each revenue funding source comes from, and then how much we anticipate getting in those funds.
And so, as far as interest on investments, so do we get paid interest on the rainy day fund?
We do.
So that goes
It's
into
built into
education, so that goes to education, or it goes back to the rainy day fund?
The interest on investments goes into the education fund,
Okay.
but then if we have extra funding, then we put money back in to the.
okay.
So that's why, I mean, if you look at the amount that comes in interest, we try to put more than that in rainy day each year.
Okay,
So
I was just curious.
in essence, it's coming here. So
So
we don't have
it
to,
all goes to education.
so that
But it
borrow from, you
goes,
know,
mm-hmm,
if we need it, it's here, if not, it's going to rainy day.
got it.
All right, following this section, you'll see the notice to taxpayers. Again, it will be visible on our website and also at budgetnotices.in.gov. And it tells when we are having the public hearing date today and the place. It'll also give the time and place for the adoption meeting, our estimated school operation max levy, and then the property tax cap credit, because there is a tax cap. We can't just keep raising taxes, and that's a good thing. Proposed tax rates for July through December of '24 and budget year '25 are built in here. Again, we have worked with, especially with Tom Johnson and also Damian Matos, who is working with us with our bond proposal. We have worked really hard to make sure that that the tax rate is going to come back down, due to, you know, a number of things that affected this past year. And so we're making adjustments on our end in the budget to try to mitigate that. I know we're walking through this kind of quickly, but that's why we're giving it to you today, so that you have lots of time to study it. And you're welcome to email me with any questions, and hopefully then at our next discussion meeting, I'll come prepared, hopefully with answers to those questions. Our capital project plan, Josh worked with the school administrators as well as our maintenance department and others to look at the things that we've accomplished on our prior capital project plans, things that we are going to be accomplishing using bond money, and then build this on things that are not coming out of the bonds at this point. So things that we still need to work on, you can see some carpet squares, replacing carpeting in the elementary classrooms, the overhangs of that building, landscaping, parking lot paving. Those are things that we try to do annually. Masonry repair, replacing ceiling tiles and grids. Stadium lighting at the baseball and softball fields was also something that last year you indicated that you'd like it to be on our long-range plan. The emergency services radio upgrades that we have done a couple times, and we need some more work with that. And then eventually as well, renovation or replacement of our football stadium press box.
And this will look very similar to last year, not very many changes, if any were made, just because with the bonds coming through, I want to make sure that, you know, this could look totally different next year, right? I mean, this is just what we had on there this year, and so I want to make sure that we keep that on there, but then we'll have to revisit it next year once we know more of what this would cover.
And as a reminder, with the bond this year, we have in there the things that we're doing first, and then we also built in there additional upgrades to the campus. So some of these things, depending on what the final costs come in for the HVAC and things like that, we might have some funds to hit some of this.
If there are additional things that we want to do with the pool, let's just say equipment wise, would that be covered under the pool project cost, or would that actually be like a capital project
Well,
expense?
if we have money in our lease bond,
Mhm.
and because it's written for us to be able to do other upgrades and renovations to the campus, if that's something that the board decides to do, if the funds allow, we can do that. If not, it can go on to this plan, then to be in our capital project plan. And finally, the bus replacement plan is the last thing in your booklet that you're receiving today. And this, again, working with our transportation director and mechanic, is how this is built. We try to replace them. The costs, the estimated replacement costs, have not really been adjusted in here, but that's because we never know how much they're going to jump, so this is just an estimate. But we also, each year, when Kerwin notifies us that prices are about to go up, we purchase what we're going to purchase, even though it's going to take us a while to get those buses. We do that in advance so that we can do it before prices jump. Also, you see like the buses that they plan on doing. For example, this year bus numbers 27, 8, and 22. That may or may not be the ones once we go to replace, because some of our buses may be older, but they drive a short city route. And some of our newer buses might have one of our more rural routes that take a little beating on some of the rural roads, and they might need replaced even if they're not the oldest bus we have. So that decision is made again by, or recommendation, by our transportation director and bus mechanic.
Can I ask you a quick question? And you probably told me this before. So the bus, what do we do with the bus we replace? Do we sell it?
Sometimes we trade them in.
Okay, they will do trades, but this
Yeah.
this isn't a trade price, this is a full-blown what it
That's
costs.
usually the trade price.
This is the trade price.
But last year, for example, they weren't giving us a very good trade-in value. And a private company in southern Indiana
Mhm.
bought the buses, and we got a
Okay.
better deal that way. So
Okay.
we always look at what's gonna be the best deal for the district.
Okay.
We don't just automatically trade.
All right, thank you.
And Angie got this to me about a week ago, so this is pretty, I mean, she looked it over and we moved numbers around and all that, so she feels confident that this is accurate.
And then like the bus that we put the wrap on for the athletic teams, that was a bus that was due to be traded, but still had some life left in it, so and they were gonna give us anything for the trade, so we opted to keep it and kind of convert it to a full-time athletic bus.
And along with that, the wrap itself that got put on it, we had, one of our neighboring districts had a bus accident, and it was one of the buses that you can do special education transport on it because it had a lift and so forth. And it was going to take them several years to get it replaced. We had an extra one, so we did sell the bus to them and used, so that was unexpected, and then we used those funds to pay for the wrap and some other things, so something like that. So, yeah, we try to be as frugal as possible with these deals because we're very mindful of the money that we spend and the money we take in and how that affects our community. Any other questions about the budget?
Real quick, the proposed tax rate. I was thinking that our proposed tax rate was supposed to drop down to like 32.5 to 33. And
It's 30.35.
yeah, I didn't see that. One scenario is it's almost 36 cents, so I was curious what that was.
What that original estimate was. On the debt service.
Yeah. It's, yeah. Thought it was actually supposed to be a little bit below that.
You thinking around 33?
Yeah, 33
I
is.
got the handout, if I can. That was from Damien.
Damien.
I also know that Damien, after we had our discussion meeting last month and Damien came a couple weeks ago and talked to us, he sent the new payment
It's
amount
lower
and also
It's
had
lower
to
than
look over it
0.35.
and said we wanted to get there, so.
I was gonna make
Yeah.
33.
It looks like 0.33.
Okay.
So thank you for asking.
Yep.
Follow up with them and make sure before it's adopted that we have it fully known.
Mhm.
Okay, once again, if anyone watching this has any questions, everything that the board members just saw will be posted online. You are welcome to email me at grimes@sefschools.org. Budget in the subject line, please, and I will share your questions or comments with the board at our next discussion meeting. All right. If there are no further questions about the budget, then we'll move on to the collective bargaining. And the camera's rolling. Would you like to tell people who you are, please, and your email?
I'm Renee Howell. I teach English at the high school, and my email is howell, HOWELLR, @sefschools.org.
So, as part of, as I said earlier, Indiana law requires that we cannot begin formal negotiations without first holding a public hearing. So that's why we're here, and this is an opportunity for anyone from the public, including board members or other staff members, to offer any input or comments regarding the collective bargaining. We were able to do some just informal conversations before. Indiana law allows that. And with that, I do know, there are some things that the union wants to talk about. For example, we're looking at our sick bank and how that's set up. We're also looking, some things we want to talk about, we're looking at part of our insurance. We've had some requests through the public hearing last year. They've given us a chance to look at some other additional possible insurance options for staff members. That's something that we'll come up with budget. We always look at salary because, as I said, salary and benefits are the two things that we can budget. So anything related to that, and we certainly want to look at what our coaches and club sponsors and things like, any of those ECAs, we look at those payments, and we look at how much money we have that we can use for those things, and then try to come up with something that's fair and equitable, because we certainly appreciate our teachers and our support staff here at Southeast Mountain. And while the union are only bargaining for the teachers, not other groups, we try to be thoughtful and mindful with whatever we come to an agreement on with our certified staff. We try to make sure that that's reflected with all of our staff and moving forward. So, looking forward to another good year of bargaining in the time that I've been here. It's been a very positive experience for both sides, and I have every reason to believe that this year will go well, and we'll walk away with a very positive agreement again. Any questions or anything that anyone here wants to make sure we talk about in negotiations? Well, on the team, the representatives from the union, they can have anyone they want to that's a member of their bargaining unit come to the table. On our side, we typically have at least one board member and 2 or 3 administrators on our side of the table, and work together to try to find the best agreement possible. to show our appreciation to our teachers, while also being mindful of the 2025 budget that we've just proposed. Okay. Being no questions, no further comments, and no one came in here to make comments tonight on either, then we're gonna stop the tape now. And then, as I said, it will be posted on the website. And if Mrs. Howell or I get any comments, we will happily share them with you. Thank you.